Happy to have the two-time reigning Big Ten Coach of the Year, Paul Chryst, with us. Coach, you guys were the unanimous pick in the writers' poll to win the West in the preseason. I don't know that I've seen a single set of predictions that doesn't have Wisconsin winning it. So how do you deal with the expectations here and keep your guys from thinking this is basically a foregone conclusion?
Well, I think everyone knows better than that, right? And preseason, whatever, has nothing to do with the season ahead. And that's the joy of it, is you get to play the season. And, you know, the best way to perform at your best is to just be locked into each day. And, you know, we spent a lot of time talking about that. 2 years ago, all the narrative coming into the season was you may not win a game, may not get to a bowl. And we've got a number of guys that have lived that. And you know, certainly a big number of guys that played last year. And the only way to maximize the season is be in it each day and each game, and I think it's harder for the fans probably and for everyone that talks about it, but you know, we're in the middle of camp and all that mattered today was today's practice, and then after this the meetings, and then we get to do tomorrow.
The preseason rules changed again this year. What do you like the most and least about the new rules?
You know, as far as the amount of time for practice and all that, you know certainly last year guys started camp early. You know, we started in July. You know what? I think you just take whatever the rules are, you embrace them, and you try to make the most out of camp, and I think we're trying to do that.
What kind of personality does this team have? Each team has a different one.
Right.
How's this one developing?
Yeah, I think it's just that. It's developing. And, you know, certainly you've got a lot of guys back, and I think everyone knows, you know, Michael Dieter's personality, Dakota, the way he goes about it. But at the same time, you know, we lost a good group of seniors. And so really from last winter on, you know, a lot of these guys are maybe same guy but in a different role. And so I think you're continuing to develop that. And then, you know, in the summer we added a group of freshmen. But I like this team. They're a fun group of guys to be around. I think they like the game of football. I think they like and care about each other, and that's a great starting point. And you know what? Now's a fun time because we're focusing on football, and there's no other, you know, right now it's really pretty minimal other, you know, things going on in their life. You know, school hasn't started yet, and so camp's a good time, but I like this team.
How, with a veteran offense and not so much veteran on defense, do you decide how much contact you should have before the first game?
Yeah, I think that, you know, you've got to do a certain amount, you know, make sure the guys are ready. And even with a lot of our players that have played a lot, you know, you'd say your veteran players, you know, we had a number of them miss spring football. So there was you know, you've got to kind of knock the rust off, and there is, I think, such a thing as kind of getting into football shape, you know, the hitting and the blocking. And yet I think you can do a lot of those things and keep it safe and kind of, you know, small pod or group work. And then there'll be some times where you've got to, you know, tackle. You want them to experience a little bit of talent, but I don't think everyone's equal. You know, so you kind of got to gauge it where your team is and where that group of players is at.
How do you gauge or handle the expectations of a Jonathan Taylor? Is it tough from the outside, or is it also difficult within the organization because he's so good in what he did last year? Yeah,
it'll be interesting, you know, from the outside, because right now we don't know. You know, I've thought all along that, you know, he could have a great season and the numbers might not be the same. You know, he could have a great game and the numbers might not look the same. He may have a game that's not so great, you know, and now he comes. I think that all we need to do is make sure that we're focusing on what's right for JT, and we don't know. He doesn't know how he's going to handle it. We didn't know how he'd handle it last year, and that was, I was so impressed with, as he's going, how you handle it, and there'll be new things. You know, last year, maybe a little bit of conversation, but not much. And then as the season progressed, it changed, and he handled that well. And so I love who he is. And, you know, certainly a football player, really talented, but who he is, I think, gives him a good chance.
How do you feel about the depth on defense, particularly up front?
Yeah, I think that's something that, you know, we're finding out in camp, quite honestly. You know, we lost 3 really good football players, and then we had an injury to really would be a projected starter in Garrett Rand. And yet, you know, I like the group and the way they're working, but I think we're finding that out. We just finished our 12th practice, and I think we got to use all the time. And quite honestly, might be in those first 3-4 games. It's going to be one of those that's going to continue to develop. And I thought that really happened last year with some of our young receivers, and that may be the same case with some of our young defensive backs, that, you know, they first got to kind of earn the right to play. And then once they do that, you know, they go out and play. And that's another, you guys all know, when game day is a little bit different than practice, and then doing it that next week, you know, after a normal game week of preparation. So I think you just got to continue to help these players grow.
Head coach of the Badgers, Paul Chryst. Coach, thanks as always.
Thanks.